The thing that caused me the most amount of confusion when I was learning to knit was if I saw any of these 4 abbreviations in a pattern: yarn forward, yarn over needle, or yarn round needle. For the longest time I thought it was 4 different techniques, but in actual fact it's 2 techniques, but it's the UK version of an abbreviation and the US version of the abbreviation. So when we create a lacy pattern, we're asked to make deliberate holes or eyelets in our work. And I've used quite a chunky yarn here so that they're a bit difficult to see. But if you use a nice fine weight yarn, you can see how that would be a pretty delicate lacy pattern. So I've got a sample here that's knit stitches and purl stitches. And the thing to remember whenever you see any of those 4 abbreviations is before you start the instruction, your working yarn needs to be at the front of your right hand needle. So if you remember, before you start anything, your working yarn needs to be at the front. So here I am on a knit stitch. My working yarn is naturally to the back of my needle to do a knit stitch. So we're going to bring the yarn round to the front. So that's why it's called a yarn forward. Now we're going to knit that stitch, and as you knit you'll see the yarn, the working yarn, goes over our needle, and that's why the US abbreviation is yarn over needle. So it does make sense. So now our pattern tells us to knit 2 together, and that's to make up for this extra stitch that we've created here with this yarn over. So knit 2 stitches to keep our stitch count balanced, and I'll do 1 more knit to get to the purl stitches. So I'll just do 1 ordinary purl stitch. So remembering that rule that our yarn should always be at the front before we start, our working yarn is at the front because we're on a purl stitch. So we're going to need to wrap it round our needle, which is where the US abbreviation of yarn round needle comes from. And now we're going to purl the stitch. And you can see again that our working yarn has gone over our needle, which is where the UK abbreviation of yarn over comes from. So now we're going to purl 2 together, again, to balance our stitch count because we've just created a new stitch here. So that's what you need to remember whenever you see any of those 4 instructions. Don't start anything until your yarn is either at the front, and you're either going to be wrapping it around the needle for a purl or bringing it forward if you've been doing knit stitches.